everybody, Randy Patterson here with Boomerocity, and once again I'm pulling one kind of out of the archives, dusted it off and have scrubbed it up a little bit for a little bit more presentable format here. This particular interview was from a little over 2 years ago with the late great David Libert. David was Alice Cooper's road manager for several years and then went on to work with others. And when I interviewed him, it was in promotion of his life story that he put out. And you can see the cover of it here. And he was a delightful person to talk to, very compassionate, very much into rescue animals, especially dogs. And we had to interview or interrupt the chat a couple times so he could take care of some dogs. They were barking and such, and I didn't mind at all. It was all cool. And just had a delightful talk. And I was reminded of the interview with David when I realized that this month, this is February 2025, marks the 1 year anniversary month of his passing. He passed away a few months after he and I chatted. And his friends who knew him very well just missed him terribly and spoke so highly of him before he passed as well as after. And I thought it'd just be a great thing for his memory to clean up the interview a little bit better since my editing skills have improved a little bit and put it out not only on the website, which is where the only place this interview had resided, and put it on YouTube and the other channels so that they can be enjoyed by more people. So that's what I've done here. Replace the old logo with the new, things of that nature, put the intro music in, stuff to make it appear a little more professional. So hope you enjoy it. I hope you hit the like button and subscribe to the Boomerocity channel if you haven't already. And if you also would, please share this interview with any of your friends who you feel would enjoy hearing some backstories of David's work with Alice Cooper and others. All fascinating, and I encourage you to also order the book. Even though David's gone, let's honor his memory by acquiring the book and keeping it for our libraries and giving them to friends who might also enjoy the book. So, without any further ado, here's my one and only interview with the late, great David Libert. Rest in peace, David. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care. Hello, everybody. Randy Patterson here again with Boomerocity.com. Man, do I have a treat for you with this interview. Normally we talk to people who are behind the microphone and in the spotlight, but some of you may know, I'm a little bit of a business geek. I love the behind the scenes stuff as much as I do the stuff that takes place on stage. And that is certainly the case with the story of the man that we're about to watch on here. His name is David Libert. And man, what a rich history this guy has. He started off as a key member or founder of the Happenings back in the 60s. And then he was a tour manager for other, managed and tour managed different people. First big act was Rare Earth, and then it was Alice Cooper. And boy, does he have a lot to say about Alice Cooper. All good. But his book is entitled Rock and Roll Warrior, My Misadventures with Alice Cooper, Prince, George Clinton, Living Color, The Runaways, and more. It's a very well written book, very tightly edited, easy to read, has a great flow to it. And so I highly recommend that you get this book if you like that kind of reading, because you won't get anything much better than that, because it's all there and it's all well documented, well articulated, and expertly edited. So we talk a lot about these artists, some about Alice, Shep Gordon, and many others. We kind of go through a list of names that we both have that he knows and I've had the privilege of interviewing. And just a great, great chat. We had to do some editing in there because of some interruptions, but pretty much what you're seeing is in the order that it took place. So without any further ado, here is my interview with the wonderful David Libert. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity.com. Take care.
Can you hear me?
Perfect.
All right.
Hey, I no offense about your book, but I'd gladly trade my background for yours, man. Those are some fancy albums there.
Yeah, yeah. Hope I don't have to smelt them down.
I
Let me
doubt
just.
seriously that'll be the case.
All right, that ought to do it.
Fantastic. Looks good, sounds good.
All
Okay.
right, I'm ready.
All right. Good deal. Well, thanks for taking the time to join me, David. I know we've chatted off, through social media back and forth offline there, and finally get to talk, man. And boy, I tell you, your book was a page turner. I don't say that lightly. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Well, I mean, honestly, I mean, there are books that I read that I look forward to, and I won't name any names, but I read them and I'm thinking, why did they publish this? And because it doesn't deliver what you think it would. That's not the case with your book. Your book, I mean, well, first of all, I'm a business geek. All right, both of my degrees are in finance and all that, so I get off on the business side of things, and that's what you bring through in this book. I mean, sure, you were with the happenings, and you were behind the mic and in the spotlight, but man, you went from that to the nuts and bolts of things, man, and that's kind of like my porn. So
Well, I'm sort of a nuts and bolts guy. That was sort of my certainly my job with Alice Cooper
hmm
to take care of all of the intrinsic little details that were on the road.
hmm
So yeah, that's sort of what I did.
So I mean, so first of all, what's been the response to the book so far?
It's been great. I mean, um, everybody seems to like it, and they seem to like the flow of it all,
hmm
and uh, the people.
So
Yeah, the reaction to the book has been great. People are people are saying that as they read it, people that know me say it sounds like me. So that was a nice thing to hear. That's what I tried to do. I tried to make it sound like I was doing the talking, which of course I was. And yeah, it's this book really isn't going to be out until first week in September. So all we're really doing now is doing social media thing, and um, the reaction has been just incredible. I'm overwhelmed. I couldn't be happier about it all, and I'm glad, Randy. I'm glad to hear that you like the book as well.
oh, I absolutely, and like I said earlier, I'm a business geek. That doesn't mean I know all that stuff, but I get off on reading about it. And I'll get into this in a few minutes, in a few more questions down the road. But you just reading about some of the people that I've had the privilege of interviewing, or interviewing people next to those people. I mean, I've interviewed Alice a couple times. I interviewed Shep when he come out with his book. People tied to Alice, like Damon Johnson, after the first band broke up, and
Right.
others, people tied to Prince and all that. And so to hear your perspective of things, it was just, to me, it just helps fill in the gaps, and you see a little bit different color to things from your perspective, and I just think that's really cool. So one thing that really, and I know you get into this a little bit in the book, I mean, you go way back into the, like I said, in the spotlight and behind the mic with your band, The Happenings, and you had some pretty decent success there. So for people that haven't read the book yet and will see this just before the book comes out, why did you go from behind the mic to where the sausage is made, and managing tours and managing artists, because that's not always the sexy part. That's the ugly and hard part a lot of times.
Well, I'll tell you, the happenings were doing well, but it got to a point where we stopped having big hits, and I started to, and also I was also the de facto manager of the happenings for most of their career as well. So I was learning as I went along, and I came to the conclusion that either the happenings had to change, become more modern and progressive, rather than that syrupy pop stuff that we were doing, which was really our success with hits. I realized that I couldn't be a happening forever, but I could manage bands and I could do all that kind of thing. I just felt that there was more of a retentive quality in the business end for me than being in front. Being in front. I just felt I couldn't be a happening forever. I mean, how many groups last more than just a few years?
Yeah.
Not many. And so the transition from, artist to business person was really not a painful process for me at all. I was happy to do it. And, that was my pursuit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I mean, I know for people that just see the glitter of it all, they think no matter what it is, as long as you're tied into the entertainment business, it's all big money and easy riding and tour managing. I mean, my Lord, what tougher role could you have taken besides being a roadie yourself? That had to be eye-opening, though, wasn't it?
Well, not really. I mean, I went from the happenings and I did a few odd things, and then I was booking some club in Long Island, and I was managing a couple of people, and then I became road manager for Rare Earth, and that was a pretty sweet gig.
Yeah.
They basically worked on weekends, so I could be home in New York all week, and I'd fly out to Detroit where they live like Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening. We do the weekend. I put them on a plane, send them back to Detroit, and I hopped on a plane, went back to New York. This went on for several months. It was really a very sweet gig. And then one day I got a call from Johnny Padell, Alice Cooper's booking agent.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me that the Alice Cooper band was looking for a tour manager. Would I be interested? And one thing led to another, and I became Alice's tour manager. And I'll tell you, the first couple of days there, I thought that I had made a horrible mistake. What did I get myself into? I mean, I left my nice, cushy, Rare Earth road manager job for this insanity. It just seemed to me just a bunch of crazy looking people crawling all over the gear like giant insects, and
That's what it was. I mean,
yeah, it was. And the Shep Gordon says, look, I mean, I didn't know it. Shep says, David, just observe. You'll get the hang of it. It'll all be good. And of course it was. About a week later, everything sort of started to fall into place. And I sort of evolved into, morphed into the job being Alice Cooper's tour manager, which was just an incredible experience because he was like the hottest thing on earth at the time.
Yeah.
So it was quite a ride.
What year was that you joined him?
What's that?
I said, what year was that you joined him?
I believe it was 1972. I'm showing my age, of course, but yeah, I was Alice's tour manager from 72 through the end of 75.
Okay. Yeah. Well, ironically, what you mentioned Rare Earth and then Alice, one of my first non-Elvis Presley 45s was Rare Earths I Just Want to Celebrate. And then, I mean, I grew
It's a
up,
great record.
yeah, it was wonderful. And the live album that came out not long after that was phenomenal. And then, I grew up in Phoenix, David. So, I mean, Alice Cooper was homeboy, right?
Oh, well,
Yeah. So,
absolutely.
but I was raised in church, and I just had this perception that he was this, devil worshiping chicken slaughterer, so, I figured he had the satanic Bibles laying all over his mansion or whatever. But, of course, we all know that's not true, and
No.
that type of thing. But my Lord, that just, I mean, the urban legends about Alice and all that. But I'm going back for my class reunion tomorrow, and we're flying out tomorrow for the weekend. And, everybody feels like they know Alice and that he's their guy, right? And I mean, you talk to anybody in Phoenix, everybody's sister dated him. I mean, he could have never started a band with all the girls he supposedly dated. But, but yeah, we're all proud of Alice. And like I told you earlier, I got to interview him a couple times, and always very kind and gracious to me. And
You know what? That was the whole thing. He's such a nice guy. I mean, everybody loved him. Everybody loves Alice. He's just a great guy, which made being his tour manager such a great experience because he is such a nice guy.
Mhm.
He's got no airs about him. I mean, he doesn't really take himself seriously at all. He takes what he does seriously, and that's
Right.
how he earns a living. But he just wants to be one of the guys. He wants people to like him for who he is,
Yep.
and that's a nice attribute for someone to possess.
It is. It is. And, how his family's turned out and all that. I mean, it's a great guy. I saw him in concert 3 times in a year and a half. And I think I'm due to see him 3 more times for another year and a half. I love the show he puts
Great
on.
show.
And I mean, like I said, growing up being a fan of his, it wasn't until 3 years ago that I first saw him in concert. So, but yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have the money to go to concerts, and the way ticket prices are going with a lot of these acts, I don't know if I can afford to go now. So back to the book and you putting the book together. Was it easy for you to put together? Was it cathartic to write it? Tell me about the process there.
I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, quite frankly. Writing a book and bringing it to fruition is an almost overwhelming task. I had no idea. I mean, I started about 4 or 5 years ago, wrote things down. This could be interesting, that could be interesting, and then I got into it, started writing, and maybe got a third of it done. And sort of hit a stone wall, and then other things would come to mind, and I would take notes. And if I thought about something, I would just go over to the laptop and, without any regard to spelling or grammar, it was just a stream of consciousness, and I just put it down, and then I went back and
Scrubbed it.
tried to. But it took a while to really get it done, and also I had a wonderful editor who, by the way, also lives in Phoenix, Susie Michelson.
Yep. I know her. We're Facebook friends. Yeah.
She's wonderful. I mean, she took complete charge of everything, and from the editing, and we went back and forth on that for months. She wanted the book to be as perfect as it could be, and she brought in people to design the cover, and she we went over the photos. She wanted it to be as perfect as could be. She wanted it to be elegant, and I really can't thank her enough, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And my publisher, I'm his first venture into publishing. My publisher really owns a record company, and he wanted Len Fico, my publisher, he wanted to get into publishing, and he fell in love with my book. He says, David, your book is going to be my first release. So everything sort of fell into place, and And like I say, Susie oversaw the entire thing, the editing, the production, and I really can't thank her enough. So
I've had a little bit of exchange with her on some things over the last couple of years, and I don't know her that well, but I mean, I know people that know her well, and her reputation is stellar, you know. And again, I can't say it enough. The outcome of the book, your content and its readability is just phenomenal. So I mean, I think you should start writing more books.
oh, please, please give me a break. But thank you very much. That's really nice to hear. Being my first venture, I didn't know what the reaction would be. I mean, I thought it was a pretty good book, but your reaction is pretty much a reaction I'm getting from everybody. I'll tell you, last Sunday, a week ago Sunday, Alice was at the Greek Theater. He played the Greek Theater here in LA, so I went, got invited and I went down.
I saw some of your pictures from that. That was cool.
Yeah. It was just a great evening, and Shep said to me, congratulations on the book, David. It's really a great read. And he says, and by the way, Alice, who never reads books, read the book and loved it. Now I have to sort of take it with a grain. I have a feeling that Alice read the Alice Cooper parts, or maybe Cheryl, his wife Cheryl, read him. Listen to this. This is what David said. I mean, I don't know, but that was a hell of a compliment to say that Alice read the book because,
Well, hey, I saw the picture of where he stood there holding the book that you posted. I mean, that's to get him to do that. I mean, wow.
I know. I mean, what a sweetheart. He's kind and generous with his time. I said to Shep, kidding around, of course, I said, I love the picture. I'm going to turn it into a poster. I'll make a fortune. And he said, yeah, and Alice and I will sue your sorry ass for copyright infringement. So go right ahead, Libert. Of course, I was, yes, it's just a remarkable picture.
Yeah.
It shows you what a nice guy he really is. I mean, he was on the road. He went through a lot of trouble to make that picture.
That's right. That's right.
I really, I love him to death. He and Cheryl are, hey, America's sweetheart. And it's funny because you're right. When you were growing up, you thought he was like bludgeoning puppies to death. When in reality,
I mean, he wanted us to think that, right? So,
yeah, that's what people thought. But in reality, and I think I put this in the book, one of his favorite pastimes besides playing golf was he knew that, I was a musician, that I could play any song in any key. And he would lean up against the piano, drink in hand. When he drank, he doesn't drink anymore, of course. And he would sing songs like The Lady is a Tramp and I Left My Heart in San Francisco, which he pronounced Dan Frandito when he imitated Tony Bennett. Could you imagine if his fans knew that he enjoyed doing that kind of thing? This devil incarnate guy.
Yeah.
He was a lot of fun. He really was. It was great.
Well, gosh, and being able to fly around. I mean, back when rock and roll was, excess, flying on the Starship, having the other planes and all that. I mean, my Lord, how fun all that was. And you getting to be a part of that was, that's a once in a lifetime experience because it doesn't happen anymore. I mean, sure, you get, the bigger acts like the Stones or, McCartney or somebody can get big jets like that. But anymore, it's tour buses, for the most part.
Yeah, but, absolutely.
So when you your span of knowledge in this business is vast. I mean, you've seen it change so much over the last almost 60 years. I mean, that's quite a view to have. What do you think are the best and worst changes in the music business that you've witnessed?
Well, you're right. I mean, was privy to enjoying the golden years of the music industry. And I think, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot has changed. I mean, it's a completely different universe. Whereas people like you and me, we had record collections, and that record collection sort of identified us as who we were by the
Mm-hmm.
music we listened to. Our record collection was a manifestation of ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, today, record collections don't exist anymore. Kids don't buy.
This is on our phones. Yeah.
It's all on their phones. It's all on their. And you know what? I can't really blame them, because for $10 a month, you can ask Alexa. I hope she didn't hear me. Or Siri. You can ask for any song ever recorded and instantly get it, or any genre, or any band, or any album. So why would they buy a record when they can simply ask for it and hear it? I do it myself. I mean,
Yeah.
I have
here.
Apple Music. I have Amazon Music, and it is very convenient, and at home and in my car. So it's all streaming these days. And
But David, here's the thing though about that. Never again, because of that, will we ever have that a School's Out album that you open up and there's paper panties on the album.
Yep.
That was it then. That was or a snakeskin looking album cover, or, all these creative albums. When an album came out, it was an event then. You couldn't wait to go and get it. And then, you sound like me. You get it home and you unwrap it and you sit down, and you slap it on the turntable, and you're just reading through all the liner notes and all that, finding out who's who in the zoo and, all this stuff. And that, it just doesn't happen like that anymore. And I miss that. I still buy albums. If you can see my office in here, I've got my ceiling lined on the walls with autographed copies of the vinyl. That's what I love. And I guess that's from being an old fart, but I think the generation today is missing out on a lot because of that.
I agree with you, but it is the way it is. And we live in the age of Uber. They don't necessarily want to buy a car. This new generation, and they just see life from a completely different point of view.
To that
for
point,
better or for worse. I suppose.
True. What, to that point, like we said a while ago, you were neck deep in the whole tour planning and management thing. And that was before cell phones and probably to a great extent computers and all that other technology.
Yeah.
Do you look around today and you see this stuff, the smartphones and the laptops and all that, and do you think, man, if I had this back when I was, road manager for Alice or handling George Clinton or, any of that, I would have done X, Y, or Z differently. Do you find yourself thinking that from time to time?
Yeah. Being an old fart myself, I somehow have embraced the technology of today. Listen, when I was a tour manager and we were planning tours, every tour manager had this enormous book. It was an Atlas mileage book, and it had the mileage from any city in North America to any other city in North America. The book was, like that thick, and it was huge. Well, you don't have to do that anymore, do you? You can just punch it up on your iPhone and instantly get the answer what the mileage is. So do I like that? Yeah. Hell yeah. Not nicer than dragging that ridiculous book around from city to city. Yeah. There are things, but has it lost its the essence of the whole thing? It's the substance of what it was to do a tour, I guess, I mean, I'm pretty much retired these days, but I mean, even up until a few years ago, I would find myself on the road, either with Brian Auger or, Living Color, somebody else. Yeah, it's all different today. And
I just recently connected with Brian on social media. I'm going to be reaching out to him in the near future to talk about him, because that's what I'm all about, man. Our generation and the music and the influencers and even the behind the scenes people. Anybody who interests me, I'll talk to. But Brian seems like a fascinating guy, and
he is. He absolutely is. He's
what
been around longer than all of us.
yeah, and knows a thing or two. Probably forgotten more than we'll ever know. But so I'm going to name some names. These are people who you have mentioned in your book that I have in one way or another connected with myself, and just wanted to get your a comment or two about each one. It's a handful of people.
Listen, can we stop just for 1 minute?
Sure, go ahead. You want to take care of your dog?
I'm
So I was going to mention names. A couple of them we've already mentioned, but I kind of go through the quick list here and get a comment or two about each of these people. Top of the list again, Alice Cooper. What would what would be your quick promo talk about Alice?
great guy, total professional, a pleasure to be around, a pleasure to work for. Just there's nothing bad I can say about the guy. Great guy.
Good
Wonderful
deal.
man.
Someone I interviewed a few years ago when he came out with his book was Dennis Dunaway.
Ah, Dennis Dunaway was my favorite original band member. He was just such a nice guy, and he has been with his wife Cindy, who at that time before they were married was Neil Smith, drummer's sister.
Yeah.
And Dennis and Cindy and she was on the road. She was the dancing tooth. Those two were just the nicest, sweetest people. I mean, just really, really nice people. And kind of miss them. They were always nice to be around.
He was a fun interview, and the book he wrote was great. I mean, gosh,
great book, absolutely.
very good.
And I'll tell you, when I was writing my book, I would call him up for advice and tips and things of that nature, and he was generous with his time and opinion to a fault. He was really very nice to me about it.
I need to find the first edition of his book, because what I have, what was sent to me, was the review galley of it. So that's what I read. There were no pictures in it or anything like that.
Really?
Yeah. So I want to get I want to find the first edition of it and then try to track him down and see if he'd sign it for me. But so someone else tied to the Coop group there is Shep Gordon. I interviewed him when he came out with his book. I watched Mike Myers's documentary on him, and what do you have to say about Shep?
Shep Gordon was my mentor. 99% of what I ever learned about this business, I owe to Shep Gordon, and maybe the other 1% to Johnny Padell.
Mm-hmm.
Shep wasn't just Alice's manager. He was a creative force in all of that, that stage show and all of that. It was pretty much Shep Gordon. I mean, he dreamed this stuff up, and he was absolutely fascinating to watch. Best boss I ever had. He was fun. He was extremely demanding. The most unforgivable person I've ever met. Mm-hmm. But he demanded absolute perfection. Anything less was simply unacceptable to him, which made me a better tour manager.
Mm-hmm.
He was a lot of fun. I owe Shep Gordon an awful lot for whatever success I enjoyed after I left Alice Cooper.
Hmm. Uh, the little bit I talked to him, great guy. I love that documentary Mike put together on it, and
Right. Uh-huh.
I think I've watched it something like 4 times. Once was just a couple of weeks ago, and I think the big takeaway with that was how he talks about coupons and the for favors and such, and then his laugh. Yeah, I think
Well, talk
Alice
about that in
described
the
it like
book,
a
though.
seal.
Yeah. I described it a few different ways, but mostly it sounded like he was choking on a sardine, a seal choking on a sardine, and everybody imitated him.
Yeah.
On tour, uh, I had an inexhaustible supply of these Groucho Marx glasses. It had a mustache
I
and
remember that in your book.
a big nose. Put them
Hmm.
on, you were Shep Gordon. If you flapped your arms up and down and twirled around and went, you were Shep Gordon. So everybody imitated him.
Now, I noticed in your book, I don't know if you knew the guy or met him, but is somebody I say he's a friend of mine. He contributes to my site every month, and that's Bob Gruen. He is, I feature,
Know him well. Know him
good deal.
very well.
I feature one of his photos every month. We've been doing it for over a year now, and he does a video exclusively for Boomerocity about the photo we're focusing. And this month, I posted it last night, is Alice with Salvador Dali.
Yes.
And so, what do you have to say about Bob?
Bob Gruen is the consummate professional. I've known him. He used to be on the road with us
Hmm.
40 years ago with Alice to a great extent. Shep never wanted to use the same photograph twice. So that required somebody pretty much being on the road all the time.
Hmm.
And so that's how I got to know Bob. He was on the road with us a lot. In fact, 10 of the photos in my book in the photo section are Bob Gruen photos. He was a wonderful
Yeah.
photographer. He had a great eye for things, and um, he was a good guy. He was fun to hang out. He fit into the Alice Cooper family very well. Let me
Yeah,
just say
I
that
can imagine that.
he's a good guy.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I've interviewed him several times, and of course, like I said, he's been contributing. My story I always like to tell about Bob is that when I first interviewed him, it's been several years ago. Great interview, loved it. About a year or so after that, I like to check on what's being said out there about me or my site, and I came across a posting in Yoko Ono's website, imaginepeace.com, and it was the entire interview that she posted, and and mentioned my name and that it was with Boomerocity, and it's still in the archives there. And ordinarily, I'd get a little miffed if somebody would take an entire article of mine and not ask permission, but we're talking Yoko Ono here, so I was like, "Hey, I'm good with that." And Bob's always gracious with his time. He's always on
Yeah.
time with sending me stuff. I like to run something new every month,
And he
and
knows everybody.
yeah, he does.
Everybody.
And he's professional with each and every one of them. If he doesn't
Yeah.
like somebody, I wouldn't know it because he would never say. And but I told him that we were going to be talking this month. And I said, hey, I'm not going to tell you what to submit, but if you want to submit a picture about Alice Cooper, wouldn't hurt my feelings any. And so it was the Salvador Dali picture that's on there now, and the video's pretty fun too. It's interesting what he says on there. Now, getting away from all of the Alice stuff is somebody that I've talked to a couple times, and that's Carmine Apiece. But
My buddy.
your buddy, yeah. What do you got to say about Carmine?
Carmine is one of my very closest friends, which is amazing considering how we first met. And how we first met was that the happenings were going to be the opening act um, for Vanilla Fudge at a college gig in Mammoth, New Jersey, Mammoth College.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was pretty excited about it. First of all, I invited my mother to the gig she had never really seen the happenings, but it was close enough to Paterson, New Jersey, that I was able to arrange for her to come. And, I was very anxious to look like a successful, the happenings. And we got snubbed by Vanilla Fudge. They didn't even acknowledge our presence. I don't know if it was because they've been on the road for a couple of years and were exhausted. Maybe they didn't feel well. Maybe it was the fact that they had Led Zeppelin as their opening act for the last few months, and meeting the happenings after that was maybe not so high on their list of priorities. Whatever it was,
Yeah.
I said, fuck them. We're going to go out and do a killer show, just embarrass the hell out of that. So we went out and we did a great show. Unfortunately, so did they. They just did an unbelievable show. The people at Mammoth College certainly got their money's worth that night. And Carmine and I became friends like many decades later. And I ended up actually managing Vanilla Fudge for a few years. I love Carmine. He's the most entrepreneurial artist I've ever known. He's a real businessman. And
Yeah, he is.
And we have a joke. He pretends that he's not all that interested in sports. He is, and he loves to call me if he knows I'm watching a game, like a big game. He figures I'm watching. He'll call me like if there's a minute to go, it's a tie score or something like that, because he loves it. I know it's him, because of caller ID. And I'll pick up the phone and I'll say, whoever this is, you're either English, you're a musician, you're gay, you're a gay English musician, you're a woman, or you're Carmine Appice, because who the fuck would call me? Who else would call me at a time like this? He never gets tired of hearing that.
Well, he's always been kind and gracious to me. I think I've interviewed him twice, and last time was on Zoom, and super nice guy.
Very nice guy. I love him to death. And his girl friend Leslie. They're just really lovely people.
Yep. The first time I talked to him, they were packing to move to Florida, and then the second time was, I think, last year sometime, and they were already in their home. He had the studio set up and all that. So
yeah.
Now a pair of people that I've interviewed, both of these guys, Mike Volman and Howard Kalin. From that, it kind of ties back to the Cooper days, but what do you have to say about those guys?
Well, Mark and Howard had, we talk about changes in the music industry. Those two guys perpetuated a huge change in the music industry.
They sure did.
And I'd like to think because we got along so well. Alice loved having these guys as a support act. I mean, they were great to have around. They were funny. I would get up on the PA on the airplane on every flight and, disseminate information about, what was going on for the day. And, but with them around, they would augment or just take over my PA announcements. And it was a bit of relief because I wasn't solely responsible to keep everybody amused. I had really professional comedic backup to help me with that. And I made sure that Mark and Howard, their band and crew, enjoyed every amenity that a big rock and roll tour could provide. I'd like to think that 40 years later, when they decided to sue Pandora and Sirius XM for hundreds of millions of dollars, was because I was so nice to them. In reality, the big companies filed suit as well. Warner's, who owns the Happenings Masters these days, settled for hundreds of millions of dollars. were responsible for Congress to pass the Music Modernization Act,
Mm-hmm.
which gives artists like myself who have pre 1972 recordings. That was what the whole lawsuit was about. We weren't getting paid. Everybody gets paid now. Everybody gets a fair shake.
As it should
And
be. That's
I
right.
have Mark and Howard and every other artist in this industry should be thankful to them as well, because they single-handedly changed everything.
Yep. Yep. They were. I met them not long after I started Boomerocity. It was about almost 13 years ago. They were touring with Hippie Fest, and I was backstage, and I was holding Chuck Negron's book, Three Dog Nightmare,
Yeah, yeah.
and Mark came up to me and goes, "Is that his book?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "God, look at it." You know how he talks, and handed it to him, and you could tell he was just absorbing what it was because he wanted to see, Chuck's book. And I was hoping to get Chuck to sign it, but and Howard had his BlackBerry or something. He was down at the other. This is all backstage, and he's down there talking to somebody, probably his wife, and they were just taking care of business. But man, what a fun act to watch, even with Hippie Fest. It was history. It was history. But one more person, and then we'll wrap up here. And I mentioned him earlier, and I'm bringing him up not because I've talked to him yet, but because I hope to, and that's Brian Auger. What would you have to say about Brian?
Brian Auger is a wonderful human being. I mean, his knowledge of the business goes back for decades. He he created a genre all by himself, uh, fusion jazz, a very funky form of jazz with a beat to it. And he probably considered the world's foremost Hammond B3 player today.
Mm-hmm.
His musical talent and abilities are almost beyond comprehension. He's absolutely fascinating to watch. And up until I guess this past year, he was very actively touring. He would tour the States. He would do Europe, and then he'd go back to Europe in the summer and do a bunch of festivals. And highly, highly respected art. As a matter of fact, I speak to him all the time, of course. He told me, "Guess who called me the other day?" I said, "Who's that?" He says, "Elton John." He says he
Wow.
wanted to talk to somebody who would remember people like Lonnie Donegan, and you could talk about Lord John Border. When Brian was a star, Elton was a teenager, I guess. So there aren't a lot of people that Elton John could talk to about this kind of stuff. So he called up Brian, and I think he calls him on a regular basis to
Oh, cool.
just to talk about all that stuff.
Wow. Elton was
That's
one of
how.
those that I grew up around, being a big fan of, same time as I was with Alice, and um, I was hoping to catch one of his farewell tour stops, but again, these ticket prices just gotten so high. I just
I know it's
can't do it. It's
ridiculous.
tough. But so, two more questions for you. And I kind of touched on it earlier, but do you have another book inside of you screaming to get out?
No, ladies and gentlemen, there will be no other books. So I strongly suggest that you buy the one. Whoops. That you buy. Oh man.
That's all right. There you go.
Okay, my battery's going low.
Okay.
Anyway, I strongly suggest that you buy the one book that I'm ever going to write.
All right. Well, I'll be
Rock and
plugging
Roll
that
Warrior.
too. Excellent book. Anything else on your radar that you would like to do?
Well, in my semi-retirement, I become an animal rights activist, and
Mm-hmm.
that takes up a lot of my time. And I love all animals, especially dogs, and so it's kind of consuming. I moved from LA. I live out here in the desert
Mm-hmm.
near Joshua Tree, and I'm, I'm enjoying a life of leisure for the first time in my life. And
Are you near where Dave Mason lives? Because I think he lives out in that area, doesn't he?
he does, and also Eric Burden. And
Oh.
there's a whole scene out here. I'm not really a part of it, but there is a whole music scene out here. Happy and Harriet's in Pioneer Town. And I'm only about 25 minutes away from Palm Springs, so I'll go there for lunch or shopping or whatever. My girlfriend Angie really likes when we go to Palm Springs, and
Nice town. Nice town.
yeah, very nice.
Well, David, this was a lot of fun, and we're connected on social media, so I'm sure we'll be, pinging each other from time to time. I may reach out to you for comment if you don't mind. I'd love to, get you on Zoom again, get a comment if I'm talking to somebody that you may have worked with or something, and just maybe have you put your 2 cents in worth in on that. And but it's, again, I would say it with all sincerity, the book was great.
Thank you. Thank
I
you very
highly
much.
recommend it to all my friends that are interested in this. And you and Susan did a phenomenal job hammering this one out, man. It's great. And so let's stay in touch, and let me know if I
Will
can
do.
ever be of service to you. And if there's something that you need to get the word out on, let's put one of these together, and I'll help you do it. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. We'll be talking soon. Take care.
Okay.